with Kristen, and then we'll just start chatting with our guests. We'll leave plenty of time for questions at the end for all the students who are here that might have questions. And so a couple of housekeeping things. We'll just ask students to just keep their cameras off and themselves muted while we're all chatting. And then at the end, it'll just be a free-for-all. If you want to put your camera on, great. If you don't want to put your camera on, that's okay too. I just, again, want to thank our guests for coming tonight. We've got great alums and great current graduating senior if you're just joining us. With us tonight, we have Tara Canny, who's graduating in December, so soon. We have Alex Austin, who's currently at NASA's JPL and has been there for a couple of years, and he's going to talk to us about what cool stuff he's doing in space these days. And we have Sean Beacham, who's been at Pratt & Whitney in Maine for 3 years, Sean?
Getting there. 3 years in
Yeah,
January.
yeah. So we've got a good diverse group of people who have diverse experiences within the Aero field. And first, I'm going to welcome Kristen Kettering, who's our representative for Aero, to the Career Center, otherwise known as the CCPD on campus. And I'm going to let her talk a little bit about what the Career Center does for our students, and then we'll just get our discussion started. So, Kristen, thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to pull up a quick PowerPoint here.
Go for it.
Yeah, and then I'll continue. Just take me a second, hopefully. All right, hopefully everybody can see this.
Looks good to me.
All right, thank you so much. So yes, my name is Kristen Kettering. I'm one of the career counselors from the CCPD, and I specifically work with the students in the School of Engineering. So all the different majors within engineering, I work with those students. And just going to talk to you a little bit about what the CCPD does, what we do on a regular basis, and how we can help you prepare for the future, as well as searching for internships or co-ops or full-time jobs eventually. So first of all, where are we located? We're located in the DCC building in Suite 209. And where that is located is, if you know where the Starbucks Cafe is, we're literally just right underneath the Starbucks Cafe. So just go down the stairs and we're right underneath there. What do we help with? How can we help you? So we help with resume and cover letter writing. We help with interview preparation. So we can do a full-blown mock interview, or we can just talk you through the interview process and common types of questions that are asked. We can help you search for internship, co-op, and full-time job offers, or jobs searches, I should say. Salary negotiation and offer letters. So you will get offer letters for both for internships, co-ops, and full-time positions. Sometimes those are a bit confusing or a little bit anxiety producing. We can help you, talk you through anything that you have questions on regarding that, as well as salary negotiation for your full-time position. We can help you with that. We also can provide students with some career assessments and just career path assistance, basically. So we have resources that can help you narrow things down a bit and just clarify things a bit. We also help students with the graduate school application process, both the applying, finding the schools to apply to, any of the application materials like your essay, anything like that, and any employer correspondence. A lot of times you have to email an employer or a recruiter or something like that, or getting on LinkedIn and utilizing that website. So any questions you have or any issues you have with that, we can help you. So that's just a little bit of how the CCPD can help you. So let's talk about Aero engineers specifically. So we'll talk a little bit about salary. There's a really great site. It's called the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's right here, www.bls.gov. When you get on there, there's a lot on there. So you just want to search under job seekers and then click on Occupational Outlook Handbook. But basically what this website provides to you, this is a federal you know, these are national US statistics that are updated every year. You can get salary statistics. You can get a whole description of any job occupation you can think of, typical work environment within that occupation, as well as job growth potential, and description of typical responsibilities. So it's just a great site when you want to see what your major is all about, or other areas of engineering you want to compare it to your major or that kind of thing. It's great. But they have, for the year 2020, the median salary for Aero engineers as $118,600. Now, this is going to be a little bit higher than the RPI statistics. And I'll talk to you about those in a second, because it's anyone working as an Aero engineer in the year 2020 with a bachelor's degree, basically. So you're going to have people that are, you know, been in the field for 10, 15 years, and they have, you know, a much higher salary, and then with people that are just starting out. But this is the median salary for that. We keep statistics too. Our office keeps statistics on everything career related for our graduates. So for the class of 2020, the aeronautical engineering students, the graduates, their average salary with their full-time positions was 82,000 and change, so almost 83,000. The range of salaries was between 69 and 101,000. So these are this is the class of 2020, the full-time job offers they received. And where you can find that is on our website, so ccpd.rpi.edu, and then you just click on students and hiring statistics, and then you just click on this 2020 annual report, and you can see all the different areas of engineering within this annual report, and the salary ranges and everything like that. Okay. So these are just a sampling of some of the employers that hire RPI Aero students for full-time positions. Again, it's just a sampling. Again, if you go into the CCPD page and click on hiring statistics, instead of clicking on the annual report, you would just click on list of full-time employers, School of Engineering, which is just right below it. Okay, but that's where you'd see. So this is just a sampling of some of the major companies that hire our students, for our Aero students, for full-time positions. Okay, skills to emphasize on a resume, and I'm sure the people on this panel are going to be able to talk more specifically about this. Before I talk about this, just a special note with Aero students is that when you start applying to jobs, whether it's internships, co-ops, or full-time positions, many of these positions are in the defense industry. So you're going to be applying to companies that are working for the US government, the military, anything like that. There's usually an extensive background searches done, and sometimes these searches take a very long time, 6 months to a year. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're applying to Aero positions, whether it's internships, co-ops, or full-time positions. But the things to emphasize on your resume, and you make an appointment with us, we can help you figure out where you emphasize these things, your business skills. So again, Aero engineers, they have to meet a lot of like government standards in their work. So you have to, you know, have good business skills in order to be familiar with everything that you need to meet, all of these standards that you need to meet. Critical thinking, analytical skills, very important. Math skills, very important. Your problem solving skills. So when we meet with students, you know, they're like, how do I show my problem solving skills? Well, you show it through your projects. You collaborate with your classmates on projects. And when you do that, we can, you know, help you put that on your resume and really showcase that to employers. leadership or project management. So any of these projects that you do within your classes, if you're the lead or you're the manager, you know, like you lead this project, any other kind of leadership. It doesn't have to be your projects that you do. It can be any kind of leadership. Very important in your writing skills. So how we help students with their showcase writing skills is with your cover letter. So a cover letter goes with your resume. Some majors, it's not so important to write a cover letter, but we would say with engineering majors, when you're applying to jobs, really important to write a cover letter with your resume because it is showing your writing skills. Okay. So just lastly, how to contact the CCPD for more information. You just want to get on Handshake, click on Career Center, and then click on Appointments. And you can choose the type of appointment you'd like. You can choose a virtual WebEx appointment, email consult, or we are doing in-person appointments now at the DCC. Okay. You can also attend our virtual drop-in hours, so you don't need an appointment for these. It's every Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and the link is located in Handshake Events. So it'll just say, you know, virtual Wednesday drop-ins, and you just get that link for Handshake. And again, you don't need an appointment at any time between 10 and 6. You just drop in and a counselor will be there to help you out. But that's about it on my end. Thank you so much for listening to me blab there.
Awesome, Kristen. Thank you for that information. Does anybody, any of the students on here or anybody have any questions for Kristen before we let her go and start the rest of her evening? And you know, please make use of our Career Center because even if you're a first semester freshman, the sooner you get that resume going, it's easy once you have it to just update it every year, every semester. It's not too early to start. And we have first year students who get internships in the summer. So you need to have your stuff together. And so please make use of our Career Center and have them review your resume, help you get one started. I think it's a huge benefit that we have on campus, and it's right next to the engineering building, and we have some people who are very happy to meet with you. So Kristen, thank you so much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it. Hope you have a lovely rest of your night.
Thank you, you too. Thank you so much.
So thank you. We're gonna get started with our panel because I just can't wait to talk to you guys. So first I'm gonna ask you to just introduce, each one of you introduce yourselves, name, where you work, where you're originally from, where you live now, and what degree or degrees you have from RPI. And we'll start with Tara because she's our graduating senior, and we'll start with, and ladies first for now.
All right, hi, I'm Tara. I'm a last semester Aero. I have completed internships and co-ops at SpaceX, Tesla, and Aero Corporation, which is a small aerospace company in Florida. I'm currently in Troy, and I'm originally from Long Island.
All right, awesome. Sean, how about you next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Beacham. I work at Pratt & Whitney. I've been there for about 3 years. I am from Maine and now live in Maine. And I graduated in 2018 with my bachelor's and master's in aerospace engineering.
All right,
From
thank
RPI.
you. Yes, thank you, Sean. And finally, Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex Austin. I graduated in 2016. I did a dual aeromechanical, and then I stayed and did coterm for my master's in aero. And now I work at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which I'll refer to as JPL for the rest of today. I'm originally from Rochester, New York, but now I live in Los Angeles, California.
Ooh, sunny, sunny California. Well done. On this chilly day, that sounds pretty good. I'm not going to lie. So first I wanted to ask you, each of you took a slightly different path to end up as an aero major at RPI. And I'm just wondering if we could just go one at a time and just talk about how that process played out. You know, it's not always a straight line, right? So let's start with Alex this time. And you know, did you come in as an aero? Did you switch to an aero? And how did that process work for you?
Yeah, so I came in as an Aero. For me, it was so I kind of knew that I wanted to do aerospace engineering. I was always kind of a big space nerd, so I knew that that was kind of the thing that I wanted to do. Um, so I came in as an Aero, but I decided kind of quickly to also do the dual Aero mech, and that was because I can never like nail myself down. I always just want to do too many things. So I figured, well, I might as well just do both because it'll be interesting to see what the different classes are and stuff. And I was really happy with that decision too. Um, so it was pretty easy for me just because like I knew what I wanted to do. Um, but I know that that's not the case for everyone, and I know that there's a lot of flexibility to kind of jump around. So it just kind of depends on what your interests are, and you never have to feel kind of locked into anything, which is what I learned, and especially kind of taking on multiple things like doing the dual gives you a lot of flexibility.
So Alex, have you, before I turn to someone else, have you found that having the dual, how did that play out in your, job search, internship, co-ops experience? Like, did you feel that was helpful to get those experiences? Did it help you while you were doing them? Did you feel like you had an advantage there having the dual?
So I think for me, I definitely think so. And so but it kind of depends on the person. It's like, so I knew I wanted to do something aerospace related, but I mean, there's a lot of things you can do aerospace related. Like I wasn't sure like that I wanted to do, computational modeling or focus on aerostructures, or, I mean, I was never, and I still don't. In my current job, I do systems engineering. So I kind of like touch a little bit of everything, which I really enjoy. That's kind of my thing. So I felt like doing the dual was really important for me because it kind of gave me a little bit of a wider breadth of experiences. But that being said, like if like, if you're really into like computational aerodynamics or something like that, and that's your thing, like, you can go for that too, and you can really specialize. So it was important for me. It doesn't mean it is for everyone though.
Sure, sure. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely the most popular dual in the School of Engineering because it's, not a lot of extra time. But then, it takes away your choice in terms of electives and things like that, right? So it is, I think, a very individual decision, and you're going to have people tell you, arguments on both sides, right? And I do think it's individual, and everyone makes the decision that, works best for them. So Sean, remind me, because it's been a little bit, I can't remember if you came in as an Aero or, from the get-go, or if you switched at some point.
So I came in, I think, in my, I'm trying to remember too. I came into my first semester as a mechanical
Okay.
student, but I knew I wanted to go Aero. I think I was just doing mechanical to keep my options open at first, and then I took fundamentals of flight and kind of said that's the way I want to go. I knew I wouldn't be at RPI if I didn't want to do the aerospace part.
Okay.
So aerospace is what brought me to RPI, and I stuck with that.
Gotcha, gotcha. I thought you might have come in as something else in the beginning too. And I mean, sometimes I think arrows sometimes get a little bit of peer pressure, either from peers or parents or guidance counselors or something, that they're kind of restricting themselves a little bit, right? That mechanical is more broad. You want to be as broad as possible to be as employable as possible. I don't know that that's really true. I mean, I think in any career that, like passion for your subject goes a long way. And I think if you absolutely know you want to do something, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong in 100% going for that thing, and you've all ended up with really great opportunities within that field. So I think you're kind of all making the case that, you can, if you know what you want to do, you should do it. Tara, I feel like you also took a bit of a circuitous path to the Aero major.
Yeah. So I came in, funny story. I came in originally just as a mech, and then during my orientation, I ended up talking to someone and then picked up a dual, which was the DIS dual. And
Oh, yeah.
and then the head of that program was like, because I wanted to do like race car design when I came in. So I was like, design, this makes sense. The head of the program was like, this is product design. This is not what you want. You should probably drop it. So I ended up dropping. And then somehow in the semester, I kind of started being on the sport team. I realized that I really was not great at mechanical engineering, and my strengths were really lying with like more of the fluid mechanics side and the fluid dynamic side. Like you couldn't get me to machine anything. I hated touching metal. I was not a fan, still not a fan 5 years later. So I kind of decided that pure aero was what I wanted. I ended up falling into computational aerodynamics. And so for me, the pure aero makes a lot of sense. The other thing for me too is with the amount of co-ops that I've been able to do, I've touched a lot of mechanical engineering and other types of engineering. So I feel like even though I haven't had the pure classes for mechanical like EMD or anything like that, I've definitely gotten through the experience of being on motorsport and then being in my co-ops, I definitely have gotten the mechanical side of things too, that I feel like I'm, capable enough to do that. But I know plenty of people who just do aero at this school, different schools, who go into end up being very specialized in one thing like computational, even like avionics. So I don't think that the major itself is very restrictive in that way, because I do know quite a few people who ended up doing things that were not necessarily just like straight fluid mechanics. You kind of make your education and use your education the way that you want to at the end of the day.
Awesome. And I think that's very true in that we kind of leave room in your curriculum to choose, like at this point, you choose an aero tech elective, you've got your free electives. If you don't do the dual, to, choose additional classes, then of course, you can always take additional courses if you've got AP credits to fill in. And so one of the strengths of the program, I think, is that you can kind of make yourself a little bit of an expert in certain areas if you're finding as you're taking these classes, this is my passion. I want to do more in this. I want to get a job in this, so I'm going to kind of try and make myself a specialist in this particular area. And then, of course, you've got, your flight mechanics and capstone combo, and, you can kind of tailor your degree a little bit, which I do think is a nice feature of our degree at RPI, and that you do have a little bit of that intellectual freedom, as an undergrad to choose some of the stuff that you want to do. So Alex and Sean, I'd like to hear a little bit about your kind of day to day. I'd like the students to hear like, okay, this is what my day looks like as an engineer. And, if you want to talk about, of course you can talk about some things, and that's 100% fine. But, in general, I'll start with you, Sean. What do you do what's your day to day like, and what are the cool things about your job? What are the things that kind of drag you out of bed in the morning that you're excited to do? And maybe if there's anything you don't love, if there's any aspect of your job that's not maybe as cool, if you want to just talk a little bit about your day as an engineer at Pratt.
Sure. I can walk through that. So let's see. So I can work some from home and some in the office.
Oh, nice.
During the pandemic, of course, I was mostly at home, but now I'm back in the office most of the time. In a couple of months, I'll be back at home and just kind of go back and forth depending on what projects I'm working on. So I get in the morning, grab myself a cup of coffee, open up my email and see if there's any new requests that I have for. What I do at Pratt is I predict temperatures in different parts of jet engines. So I'll have requests from designers working on certain parts to make sure that their parts don't exceed a maximum temperature that the metal can allow. So that's part of my time, but the majority of my time is spent owning a thermal model, a finite element model of a section of the jet engine. So I will own like an assembly of parts. It's all broken up finite element wise, and I decide how best to model the convection between the air and the metal, the conduction through the contacts in the metal, to most accurately predict the temperature in the engine during operation. So that's my day-to-day would be maybe something like taking a couple of sections of the model that I think could be improved, working on them, improving them, documenting what I did, reviewing it with more experienced engineers, and then publishing those changes and reporting the results to everybody who needs them. What gets me out of bed in the morning, the kind of exciting part of my job is when I get to make engineering judgment calls and engineering decisions on what's the right choice for a certain type of modeling. So what does that mean? Well, I could spend years and years and years making these models as perfect as they can be, but it's not sensible to do that. You know, you need to design an engine, it needs to get out into the market. So what's the right amount of fidelity that you need? What's close enough to meet the requirements? What at what point have you reduced your uncertainty to the point where you know that your part is going to perform its function? So those are the kind of things I like to do.
And Sean, is that kind of a scary thing? At like when you start out, right? You graduate with your undergraduate degree. Is that like, all of a sudden you're like, people are listening to me? Like, like you have this kind of a little bit of scary responsibility for these engineering decisions for parts that go into these planes. Is that like, do you ever think about that, or am I like just reading too much into that?
No, you're right. My first big project in this current role was completely redesigning a whole section of the static structure of a new engine going into the commercial market to optimize the distance between the blades in the engine from the static wall. So you're talking about a measure. I'm trying to predict down to thousandths of an inch of deflection in these parts, and I had just gotten out of school. So that was terrifying. And these things are moving at thousands and thousands of rounds per minute. Yeah, it is scary, but you make a judgment call. You document exactly what you did. You show your work like you do on an exam, and there's a pretty rigorous review process. So when I am ready to publish my results, I show how I modeled all of the convection between the flow and between the airflows and the metal parts. I show all my boundary conditions. I show how the mesh of my finite element model, and we walk through it step by step over the course of like 3 hours. And then I get a big list of items that usually take me another week to go and resolve and perform studies, and then I can release my results. So it's very carefully done, but there is definitely a lot of responsibility on my part, and it is scary.
Sure. Understand on all of that. And so for students who might be on the call and who will watch this later on YouTube, remind us exactly what kind of a company Pratt and Whitney is, and what they handle for the most part.
Sure. So Pratt & Whitney manufactures jet engines and some auxiliary power units, which are like industrial gas turbines. But for the most part, it's jet engines for both commercial aircraft, like so you're kind of like mid-sized planes for the most part. We have a lot of jet engines on mid-sized planes, and then we also do a lot of military work. It's about 50-50 commercial to military. So our engines power the F-15, the F-16, the F-22, the F-35. I think we have some on C-130s. Yeah. So
thank you for clarifying that, because I wasn't really sure what that percentage was, in terms of military to commercial. So that's super helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Sean. So
no problem.
Alex, same round of questions for you in terms of, like what do you do on a daily basis, and what's super cool about working at JPL, and what's maybe less cool, maybe, if there is anything.
Sure. So yeah, I don't no people write on the stuff that I do, so it's different than what Sean's been working on. At JPL, so JPL is one of 10 NASA centers, and our main area of expertise is robotic solar system exploration. So we're kind of most known for the Mars rovers, but we do a lot of work in astrophysics, earth science, and planetary missions. So specifically so JPL, there's about 6,000 employees. So it's a pretty big place. It's part of actually the California Institute of Technology. So we're a NASA center, but we're actually run by Caltech, which gives us a really kind of interesting mashup of academia and government that kind of come together in an interesting way. So specifically where I work in the project formulation division. So our section is focused on new space missions and new technologies, things that are probably 5, 10, 20 years in the future. And specifically what I do in that section is I lead the small spacecraft formulation team. So we focus on anything from a little CubeSat, which is like size of a cereal box or so, up to something that's like a meter cubed, a couple 100 kilograms. There's a separate group that works on things that are a lot bigger. Our spacecraft will get up to 6,000 to 8,000 kilograms at the high end if it's, going way out to Saturn or something like that. And my job, so like I said, I've never been able to nail myself down, which is why I kind of like where I am now, because I get to do a lot of different things. I spend about half of my time doing technical work, but it still varies quite a bit. It kind of depends on what we're working on at the time. Like right now, there's a lot of focus on Earth science missions. So I'm doing work on, different types of orbits we might go to get views of different places on Earth. If we have an instrument that is some size and takes some power, what does that mean for the satellite spacecraft that we have to put it on? So that's about half of my work, like technical things like that. And the other half is, to be honest, actually the more interesting half. It's very, it's a lot of management. It's a lot of talking to people. A lot of my job comes down to trying to help scientists and engineers communicate with each other. All the missions that we do are in pursuit of science exploration. But scientists and engineers don't always speak the same language. Scientists want to kind of like go discover new things, and engineers want, concrete requirements, like this is what I have to do. So I kind of try to bridge that gap between those two very different types of people. And then the third group of people is kind of the politics of it all. So in terms of something that I don't like, so something I used to not like at all was the politics. And I used to get very frustrated. And when I say the politics, I mean, so we work on government programs. There's a lot of politics around where the funding comes from and how that, what that all means. And I used to get very frustrated with that. And then I kind of changed my attitude around it. And now I actually find it kind of fascinating. It's kind of interesting to like be part of those discussions and to try to kind of, get that communication between the managers, the scientists, and the engineers, and help them all to work together to actually come up with a mission. So it's interesting. It's like, I love the technical work that I do, but it's almost like the other half is like, I feel like I'm like a psychology major sometimes, like, trying to talk through things with people and like help everyone to, come to something in the end that's going to be this really awesome mission that we're going to fly. So that was really a learning experience for me, but it was something I used to hate. And now it's actually the thing I kind of like the most about my job. So it's interesting kind of how that can come full circle.
That is really funny.
So, you kind of keep an open mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and your kind of taste changes over time too, right? What appeals to you can change over time, but the people are endlessly fascinating, So that's for sure. I totally understand that. One question I had when you were talking about, working on technology that, isn't going to be implemented for like 10 or 20 years. You have to have a lot of patience, right? I mean, if you're working on something and not to actually see it come to fruition for that long, boy, I just think that's a little tough.
Yeah, it can be tough. So especially where I am in like the formulation division, there's a lot of folks at JPL that, they work on missions, like they're working on the next Mars mission, and, it's going to launch in 2026. And, and if you work in my area, you have to kind of be willing to float around, and you have to be okay with losing a lot of the times. We propose a lot of really awesome missions that don't get selected. And that's okay. Because for me, at least, when we get one that is selected, it makes it all the more rewarding. Like we did it, So you do, it's not for everyone, the area that I'm in, because you do have to be patient. You have to be willing to kind of think about that. But the flip side, at least for me, and this is what I really like, is you know, I've never really been one to dive really deep into something. I like being able to kind of think of these new things and be really creative. And, you know, that's kind of that's the positive of it. If you can be patient and be willing to lose a lot of times. So it's a kind of interesting place to work. I didn't think that I would, you know, I didn't think I'd end up here, to be honest. You know, it's very different than some of the classes that, you know, we take that are very specific, that you're dealing with this problem. But it's a really interesting place to be. And like I said, I've kind of grown to love it, even though it was very different at first.
For sure. Now, when you get a job at a place like JPL, you know, did you have the opportunity to choose, you know, whether I'm going to work on this kind of, you know, a mission that's going to go in a couple of years, or do you have the, you know, are you just like happy to get whatever you can get if you get to JPL, or you get to choose, all right, I'm going to be working on these kinds of things. How does that work?
Yeah, so for me, I had an internship actually in the robotics division. And I was working on some small satellite robotics work that was much more specific. And that's kind of where I started. But so the way that JPL works is, you know, we have about 6,000 employees, like I said, and there generally is a decent amount of flexibility to kind of move around and do what interests you. A lot of people will work in the area where I am, like early formulation. Eventually a mission will win, you know, they'll get a win, they'll go work on that mission, you know, see it all the way through to launch, and then they'll come back and they'll kind of start over again. So there is a lot of flexibility to kind of move around depending on what your interests are, you know, within the organization, which is kind of a nice thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really great. And Sean, I just want to circle back before I head over to Tara to talk about her internship and co-op experiences. When you know, most people know Pratt as being, you know, kind of headquarters in Connecticut, right? And I think most people think like, you know, they're in Connecticut. You know, when you went to work there, did you specifically want to be in the main location? And, you know, did you kind of seek that out? You know, is there, when you get into a company like that, do you have the opportunity to move between different locations, and how does that work?
Sure. So I wanted to be in Maine from the get-go. As you probably remember, I grew up here. I love Maine so much. It's beautiful here. I love to ski. So having a large aerospace company with a post in Maine was a great fit. Yeah, Pratt's headquarters is in Connecticut, in East Hartford. They've got another location in Middletown, Connecticut, right next door, with another couple hundred engineers. But they have locations in like West Palm Beach. They have one out in California now. Our parent company Raytheon has locations all over the place. And with respect to being able to move or live somewhere else, there are those opportunities for sure. We have postings right now for hybrid and fully remote work. So you could you could live like 2.5 hours away and have to drive into the office one day per week, something like that. Or you could be on the other side of the country and work fully remote all the time, and live in the middle of nowhere. That can work too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's one nice thing we can thank the pandemic for, right? Is, you know, employers realizing that, you know, we don't need to be in a location to do what we do. Tara, I wanted to talk to you about your fascinating and varied internship and co-op experiences. And, you know, I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about that and what you've learned personally in terms of corporate cultures and the startup mentality and, you know, all of that. And just if you want to share a little bit about what I think are really interesting things that you've learned along the way.
Yeah, I've kind of, you know, been through it all at this point. You know, I started with that small aerospace company called Aerosonic. It was located in Clearwater, Florida. And I was there for over 7 months doing computational aerodynamics. And that was kind of like an older aerospace company, as people at SpaceX likes to call anyone that's not startups anymore. That was like a lot of people were older. You know, the program was like the program that I was working on in 2019 is still being in development today, which is 2021. Having moved to Tesla and then SpaceX after that, it's a huge cultural shock. in terms of, what's expected, how quickly things move. So at Tesla, so right after my co-op at Aerosonic, I moved to Tesla and I was on the Solar Roof team. And I actually did some wind tunnel testing for them, which was pretty interesting. I actually got to stick a full-size house with a roof on it in a wind tunnel and got to see it below to Category 5 conditions. So that was awesome. They let an intern lead that project. I'm still amazed to this day of what I was able to do there, and the amount of responsibility that they gave me. So, and I was out in Fremont, California, which is the Bay Area, for that. And then this summer I was at SpaceX, and I worked on the Falcon 9 engine program. So those are the Merlin engines, primarily the vacuum engine, which is the stage 2 engine, stage 2, and then also some of the smaller engine components. And the team I was on owned the entire engine from the first bolt that was put down all the way to it was being shipped out to go get hot fired in our engine test facility in McGregor, Texas, which is right outside of Waco. And I was in LA this summer for that. So I've kind of had a nice varied experience. I've worked in, fixed wing aerospace, space, and also energy. And now as I'm kind of looking for full-time, I'm a bit confused because I don't really know what I want as I've had so much experience. So, I mean, the thing is, when people think about the names of Tesla and SpaceX, it sounds really great. And it sounds it was fantastic to be there. And, we were having launches every week when I was there at SpaceX. I was there in a very heavy launch period. So it was kind of awesome to see the culmination of that engine was only here 3 weeks ago and now it's up in space delivering cargo to the International Space Station. I was able to work on the engines that went for Inspiration 4, which was the first all civilian crew. Then I went up into orbit, and I also worked on the Crew 3 mission, which I think that launch just got delayed, and I think it might be shooting off on Wednesday. So that part of the job was really cool. The flip side is though that you work a lot of hours and you don't necessarily have the best work-life balance, and you kind of have to decide whether that's for you or not. As I'm getting older, I'm 22, and figuring out what I want. I'm kind of looking for going back to the more old aerospace kind of 40 hours a week, doing my job, really liking my job, but also having a life outside of my job, because that's kind of the trade-off with a company like SpaceX, company like Tesla's. You're going there expecting to work 60 hours a week. There's not a lot of lead time, there's not a lot of lead time for anything. Everything's kind of go. And which is really great. And I was there for 3 months, and that was great for the 3 months, but for long term, it's tough, and a lot of people don't stay. I mean, we had people, if you were there for more than 2 years, you were a veteran. So, it kind of depends on what you want. I had 3 really great experiences, got to do 3 great internships, and did ridiculous stuff as an intern, things that I can't believe someone trusted a 20, 21, and 22-year-old to be able to do. So if you get the opportunity to work at any of those companies, definitely take it. It's definitely worthwhile to try, but don't be upset if you find out that they're not for you, because I kind of found out that startup culture, startup life, not really for me for long term. So yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky though that I also had 4. I got canceled on SpaceX 2020 because the pandemic, but I was very fortunate to have all of those experiences, especially as an undergrad. I know very few people get those opportunities.
And I remember you talking when you came back from the summer that one of the cool things and one of the trade-offs to that, crazy work schedule that you had was just working with incredibly smart people. You know what I mean? Just working with, amazing you know, coworkers, but you know, you when you're so tired you can't keep your eyes open and you've been up for 3 or 4 days straight, you know, that kind of thing becomes a little less a little less impressive, right? You know, so
Yeah, I mean, the people that I was able to work with will always probably be some of the smartest people I'll have ever encountered. Like these people are just mind-blowingly smart, which can be really intimidating, quite honestly, because it's just like they're so good at what they do. But you kind of have to just let that go and just try to be a sponge and learn as much as possible from these people, especially like the people that were there 5, 10 years, like they would just have these like wild stories that I would always go for story time to like the oldest people on my team because they got to see so much stuff, especially like if you're talking 10 years ago at SpaceX, the things that were going on was, I mean, it's insane today, but 10 years ago, like they have some pretty wild stories. So, you know, just always be a sponge, but always like, but it can be very intimidating when you're going in with like, you have so many, you're just surrounded by some of the smartest people in the world. And that can be super intimidating.
and if you're a, you know, I think you had your first internship after like freshman year. So I mean, you know, if you're that, you know, at that level too, I mean, everyone's going to feel like they're smarter than you. So I think it's general good advice for any internship, regardless of the company, you know, of just, you know, try and learn all you can and talk to as many people there as you can, right? Because, you know, you get a lot of insight into, you know, just the industry as a whole by taking advantage of those people that you work with. So I want to talk a little bit about, you know, like bringing it back to like RPI a bit. So, so I wanted to talk about, you know, I think both Alex and Sean, you both did the co-terminal master's degree program, correct? You did co-term at RPI, yeah. So I'll ask Alex first, like what went into that decision for you, and you know, had you done research as an undergrad, and is that what kind of led into you staying as a grad student? And then when you're finished, I'll ask Sean the same question.
Sure. Yeah. So I hadn't done research as an undergrad. So the reason I did co-term, well, there are kind of two reasons. First of all, I do think that in the field of aerospace engineering, having a master's can be important. I like JPL will mostly hire people with masters or PhDs, just as an example. It's not the same for everywhere, but I do think it is important for a lot of aerospace engineering roles. So I knew that I wanted to get the master's, and I figured that doing it with co-term was kind of the easiest way to do it. It made the most sense. I also wasn't really ready to leave. I mean, I was having a great time, had a ton of friends. Like, it was like, you know, I don't really have a reason to leave yet. I'd like to stay. So, and then the other thing, so my kind of like, you'll hear, I'll continue to just say the same thing over and over, which is that like, I can never lock myself down. So I kind of took co-term as a chance to try something a little bit different. In terms of like research, I did computational fluid dynamics as my research with Dr. Assad Oberai, who now lives in Los Angeles, which is kind of nice. I mean, it's sad for RPI because he left, but it's nice because he is here with me. So I kind of, you know, some people will do like a master's and PhD because they want to like continue to specialize in something. And for me, it was like, I've never done computational work before. So, hey, this is my chance to try it. So I might as well. So I kind of took it as a chance like to try something different. And I really liked it for that. I mean, I enjoyed the research. I'm not the type of like, I never wanted to stay for PhD. They tried to get me to stay and I said like, no, sorry, see you later. But I did enjoy, you know, the year that I spent doing it. And I thought it was a really good experience, like to try something. And it's funny how that like experience comes back where like, I haven't done CFD since I left RPI. I don't do CFD at all. But some of the projects that I've worked on at JPL have been like hypersonic entry vehicles at Mars, where we have other folks who are like some of the best people in the world that do CFD. And like, even though I don't do that work, because I kind of like have an idea of what they're doing, I can talk to them intelligently about it. And like help to make those connections, like I said, which is a lot of the work that I do. So it's interesting kind of like how it comes back to help you. Like, you know, I kind of tried something because I was interested in it, and it's been a helpful thing for me. So I really liked the co-term program. If you're thinking of doing the master's, I personally would highly recommend it. I think it was the perfect thing for me to like try something new, to get the master's kind of quickly. You know, that being said though, if you like are really into research and want to like not just do co-term because it's kind of quick, like you want to hang around for a while and keep doing research, I mean, that's okay too, like if that's what you're passionate about. So, but it was really important for me.
Awesome, thanks. And Sean, can you talk a little bit about your decision to do the co-term?
Sure. Yeah. So I knew about the co-term program when I applied and when I accepted my offer to RPI. So I was pretty sure I was going to do it the whole time. I planned on it, and my decision to do that rather than wait or go somewhere else. It big part of it was financial. I was able to do my master's quicker at RPI than anywhere else, so less money out of pocket. And convenience was another factor of it. I was already there. I knew I had research opportunities already to immediately step into. I had research experience with the same professor, so that it worked out really well for me. I really enjoyed the master's program at RPI. I used it kind of similarly to I think how Alex used it. I used it as an opportunity to kind of broaden my horizons and try out some new things. So I took classes all over, like in all sorts of different, I guess, areas. I didn't try and specialize in one thing. I took mechatronics, combustion, design optimization, finite element, numerical methods of differential equations. It was all over the place. Yeah.
That's super helpful. And Sean, I believe you graduated in December, so you did it all in 4.5 years. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. I came in
Yeah,
with
that's
2
what I
AP
thought.
classes and then took some extra, did some extra research over the course of semesters to get through my technical credits. Yep.
Got you. So that's a possibility. And I mean, I really appreciate both of you saying that it's the, you know, you can look at it as an opportunity to take a bunch of different things that you wouldn't have time to take or just not the opportunity to take. And I don't think a lot of students might necessarily look at it that way. So that's a really helpful perspective to have. So I want to talk a little bit about extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, and for each of you, how that has impacted you and if it had any impact on what your career is like and impacted your ability to get jobs and things like that. So I'm going to start with Tara this time because I think I know the answer to this one.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's kind of talked to me knows that I probably pretty much credit being on motorsport with like getting a co-op in the first place. And that's how I was kind of able to get it so early. I went off on co-op after my third semester here at RPI. And you know that is probably the most integral part of my education here at RPI was being on motorsport. I learned so much and had the opportunity to learn from people who were older than me, people who had been on the team for 4 years, people had gone off to do amazing co-ops. Quite a few of them actually worked at JPL. We had a lot of alumni that also supported us too, would come back and I learned so much in those 3 semesters that I participated in motorsport. With COVID and everything, I didn't really get back onto the team after because all the club operations were kind of shut down. I came back in spring 2020, so that kind of put a damper on things. But motorsport definitely, I think, was the most worthwhile thing I've probably done at RPI, just in terms of like it really helps me understand who I was as an engineer, what my capabilities are, and where my interests lie. So I definitely really recommend being a part of, a technical club, doing research, something outside of your education to kind of supplement and also kind of figure out, what you like to do. I don't think I would have known quite what I wanted to do as early as I did if I didn't do something like that and kind of expose myself. Like, but something like motorsport, you get exposure to all different types of engineering from, like mechanical to aero to electrical, computer, IT, like we did it all. So that was really, really great. And now this semester I actually just joined the Rocket Society and been doing some CFD for them. Because I was like, I don't really know anyone on campus. I'm going to get bored. So just happened to meet the president in one of my classes. So I kind of joined them. And that's been really fun so far. But I definitely recommend for anyone. I mean, I'm a graduating senior and I joined a club this semester. It's never too late. Don't think that there's a time limit. I mean, you are useful in every capacity. Like your education has made you, a capable engineer. And so I definitely really recommend supplementing your education in some way, whether it is a technical club like that or, finding something that aligns more with your interests. Be part of the outing club, be part of like the culinary club. I think that still exists, the cheese appreciation club. Do something else, make yourself a more well-rounded person. It really will help. I think it shows a lot in your resume that you're doing extra stuff. And it kind of just like informs you who you are as a person. I mean, 18 to 22 years old, you change a lot in those 4 years. And that really helps you kind of figure out who you are and kind of, especially as an engineer, who you are becoming. So definitely highly recommend.
Awesome. Thank you, Tara. And how about you, Sean? Remind me of your extracurricular activities at RPI.
Sure. I was part of the Rocket Society as well. I was president for a year. Let's see. Other than that, I was in the Aikido club. I was on the Maine Student Advisory Council. And those three kind of extracurricular opportunities were beneficial for me for sure. I think Rocket Club was probably the foremost. Being a part of a club like that, especially in such a in a leadership role, really taught me a lot about balancing priorities. Rocket Club was not the primary reason I was at school, and I had to keep that in mind while I was trying to balance coursework and things like that. And it's kind of the same way when you get into industry. What you're doing doesn't get any easier or get any better the next time you do it unless you take the time to make improvements, do side projects, help somebody else out. So I think that it lends a lot to workplace life, doing these things outside of what your primary reason for being at school is. Alongside all the things that Tara said too, it helps you become more well-rounded. You meet a lot of new people, and it helps you develop your professional skills in a more complete way than I think a lot of your classes do, for sure.
For sure. And then, as I recall, you also were an RA for a while, Sean, right? And I remember you running, study groups and stuff for your residents and things like that. So, and that I know took a lot of your time as an RA for sure.
Yeah, it did, and again, really helped with my current role. I do a lot of communicating with other groups, and I need to keep in touch with everybody. And having my fingers in so many different pots is kind of akin to that in my current role.
For sure. And just the level of responsibility that you have to have as an RA, right? And not always making popular decisions and enforcing rules that might not be so popular too. So that I think that's a position of responsibility that's a lot, I think, for an undergrad.
Forcing them to clean up the rotten banana that they decided to spew all over the hallway was tough call. Tough call.
And did not make you a very popular guy at the time, I'm thinking.
Yeah, they didn't mind too much. They knew they had done something wrong.
Well, thanks for that, John. How about you, Alex? What kind of things were you involved in as an undergrad at RPI?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of continue to emphasize what's been said before. So I think that doing extracurriculars is really important for a number of reasons. So what I was most involved in was, I don't even think they call it this anymore, but it was the UPAC Sound and UPAC Lights. I think they have a new name now, but it was responsible for like setting up all the lighting and doing sound for all the shows around campus and like the concerts and stuff. So very different than like aerospace engineering. But it was something that I had done a lot in high school and was always like, kind of a passion of mine. And I consider myself lucky. So I was able to, I was the president of the Sound Club for a while, and that was like one of the most formative experiences for me. And it was the thing that came up in my interviews more than anything technical. It was like, you know, oh, I had the chance to like manage, 50 shows and staff 30 different people across these different shows. And, you know, we had a budget of like $15,000 a year that I got to manage. And I mean, like those types of things, like that was like the really important experience that, you know, seemed to always be the thing that people wanted to talk about in interviews more than like the technical stuff. Not that the technical stuff isn't important, but it's like that was really important to get that experience. So I also like, I mean, I met some of my best friends through those clubs. I mean, it was just like, you know, we used to like stay up super late, setting up speakers in the union, making a ton of noise. I don't know if they do that anymore, but you know, there was always, it was just really fun. So I think it's really important, and I mean, hopefully it's a good example of something that's like, you know, all the like Aero clubs are awesome. Like join the Rocket Club, join the, like if they still have the design, build, fly, like all of that's awesome. But also like Tara was saying, it's like, you know, you can join the Sound Club or the Cooking Club or something that like isn't even necessarily related to your major, but it's still like a way to like, it's something that you're interested in, you meet people, you gain new experiences. If you get the chance to take on a leadership role, like I highly recommend it, because like I said, I think that was super important for me to have that, that leadership role that like, not that it wasn't important, because it was really important, but like I couldn't really screw up too much, right? Like it was a good chance to kind of like make some mistakes early, because then like now I like help to manage programs that are like millions of dollars. So it's like, oh, managing that $15,000 a year, like, well, I couldn't screw up too much with $15,000, but like it's good to have that opportunity to screw up then versus now. So definitely take that if you get it. I think it's really important.
I agree. And, you know, and I think what a lot of times good interviews are just like kind of conversations about getting to know people as people, right? You know, and it's not always about the number, the GPA on your transcript. It's like, what kind of person are you? Are you interested in a bunch of things? And at the end of the day, the hiring manager wants to hire someone who's kind of a interesting and a nice person that's going to sit with all these other people that, you know, that are already working there. You know, I mean, you know, you kind of can't discount the fact of being an engaged and interesting and kind of nice person. Kind of goes a long way, and you know, because they've got to bring you back to all this whole functioning team already, right? And if they bring someone in who's kind of like not very interesting and not engaged with other human beings, like, you know, the other people are gonna be like, why'd you hire that guy for? You know, I mean, you know, there's a lot of things that go into whether you're going to get a position, and, you know, might not necessarily be the stuff that we think about when we think of, you know, getting your GPA up and the right electives and all of that kind of thing, and the right internships and all of that, right? There's a lot that goes into that process. I would argue, from talking to recruiters over the years. So we got a lot of freshmen and sophomores on here, and, you know, I kind of want to talk about kind of some specific things that are going to impact them at RPI. So I'm going to ask all of you, you know, about, you know, favorite classes, favorite professors, not so favorite classes. I'm not going to ask you about not favorite professors, because I'm not going to go there. But, you know, maybe classes that you wouldn't have thought you would use out in the world that, you know, maybe, you know, you've enjoyed. I know one of the things that you and I had talked about at one point, Alex, was, you know, those kind of project-based classes, and, you know, how those kind of impact you later on and those kinds of things. So, so I'll start with you actually, Alex, then, because, you know, I'm sure you have a sense of classes that have helped you, classes that, or maybe professors or courses that were really pivotal to you as an Aero or as just an engineer in general. And are there classes that you think have been particularly helpful to you in your career? And could be technical or non-technical or whatever you want to talk about.
Sure. Yeah. So I remember when I was taking IED, working on our marshmallow launcher, and I don't know if you still do that. And I remember being told, you know, how important this was, and working with people was more important than anything else. And, you know, as our marshmallow was not even leaving the barrel of our cannon, I was like, I hate this, and this is a waste of my time. But it's really not. And now that I'm actually working, it's like, yeah, those group projects, as much of a pain as they can be, like, that's going to be your job. You're going to be working with people, and learning how to work with people is really important. So take them and make the best of them. Even if your marshmallow doesn't make it very far down the field, make the best of it, and try to enjoy it and learn from it the best you can, because it is important. In the other class that I think that Sean mentioned that he took too. So I recommend this class to everyone. The design optimization class. It was taught by Jason Hicken. I hope he's still teaching it. He's one of the best professors I have at RPI. It's one of the few classes I recommend that every engineering major take, no matter what you're doing, because it was just such a great mashup of engineering, math, programming, and real-world applications. So like, I've recommended it to Aeros, I've recommended it to biomeds, like, and everyone seems to have thought it was good. And also Professor Hicken's just awesome. So I definitely would recommend that you take design optimization if you get the chance. That was one of the best classes I took at RPI.
That's great to hear, and you are definitely not the only person who I've heard that from. It's also a hard class, so we're going to balance it in that semester that you take it in, right? And I can't remember if this was the case when you were still here, Alex, but every Aero has to choose a computational elective, and design optimization is one of the three they can take. Finite elements and CFD is the other. And of course, you can take more than one computational elective, but they have to take a minimum of one. So, it's widely taken by a number of majors. And yes, Professor Hicken is gladly still at RPI and still teaching that class for sure. So,
Awesome.
and Sean, you want to weigh in on design optimization and any other courses you might want to recommend?
Design optimization gets a glowing review. I repeat everything that Alex said about it. It's fantastic. I've used what I've learned let's see if I can say this truthfully. Yeah, every, I don't know, 3 months or so, I end up doing something that I learned in design optimization at Pratt. So that super helpful. Can't recommend it highly enough. It is hard. It's time consuming, but Hicken's a very fair professor, so you can do it. The other one that I'd recommend that I took, that I didn't really like taking it at the time, but FEA with Dr. Day was very good. And it just kind of, you end up doing a finite element problem by hand, which gave me an appreciation for what it is exactly that I do in my job today. I work in NX, the program that you all have done CAD with or will do CAD in. And I'm assigning convection values to a bunch of different surfaces and things, but really all that's happening is it's creating a giant matrix that's being inverted, and you learn exactly how do you take that math and do physics with it in Servanude's FEA class.
And that's finite element analysis. And again, that's one of those computational courses. And, that requirement of computational requirement has only been in, I want to say, like maybe 7 or 8 years at this point. I've been advising Aeros for like 20, and for the longest time that was an option, and not many students were taking these computational classes because they had a reputation of being challenging, right? Like, who wants to take something if they don't have to take it that's like math heavy, programming heavy, a challenging class. So we kind of ended up forcing students to have to take one. And, it's super gratifying to hear from both of you guys that those are, something that you use and particularly value in the curriculum. So I think that's awesome. How about you, Tara? Classes on the upside? I'm sorry, Sean, did I interrupt you? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, take all three if you can. They're all
That's all I was just about to say.
Wow.
Oh, stole your thunder. Sorry, Tara.
Yeah,
Go on.
come on. I took IFE last semester, and they have changed the course, it seems like, a little bit. You do all the FEA by hand, but now you also use Nastran, which is the program in NX, as practicum. So it's that class is awesome because it's a really good mix of the theoretical, like math side, but also you are actually learning how to do FEA as well. So definitely recommend taking IFE. In CFD right now, I really am enjoying the class in terms of we have 2 major projects and both of them are using CFD software. So I'm doing like a thermal fluid analysis on a vertical axis wind turbine, which is super cool. So unfortunately, one of my biggest regrets is not being able to take design optimization at RPI. I've heard fantastic things from everyone. So I just want to say design op, 2 thumbs up, haven't taken it, but everyone that I know who's taken it has said it's like probably the most useful class. But my favorite class probably at RPI was propulsion systems with Oschlager. If you can take Propsys with Oschlager, do yourself a favor, take it with him. Best professor I've had at RPI. Love, like, just awesome. And so it was a great class. I really, really enjoyed that class. So definitely highly recommend him. I know I've heard really good things about Housley as well. He's teaching it this semester. He's a really good alternative. And then the class I'm in right now, my capstone, space vehicle design, taught by Kurt Anderson. There's really no better professor at RPI for Aeros, I think, than Kurt. He's just awesome. You can talk to him for 2 hours after class about literally anything. He's so passionate about everything he does. He's done so much. It's crazy to hear him just talk about just weird stuff that he's done in his career. So highly recommend if you're really interested in space, go for the spaceflight track. And please go take it with Kurt Anderson. He's just a fantastic person. And like Alex said, the reality of the working world is that you have to work with people. And for better, for worse, I love working with people personally. I have a really great capstone group. We get along really well. And we get to do really cool projects. So it's been definitely one of the most formative parts of my experience at RPI, especially coming back from co-op, like coming back right directly from a space co-op and like bringing that experience to the table has been really nice. I had to like call up my manager one time because we didn't have some of the information for the Falcon 9 launcher that we needed. And so that was kind of cool that I was able to do that. And that was a great, perk of being an intern. But highly recommend, finding those classes and finding those professors that, you can just kind of bond with. And Kurt Anderson's definitely one of them. And like, he's been super helpful in giving me career advice right now about like graduate school, like how should I go to graduate school? When should I go to graduate school? So all that, but definitely highly recommend the computational classes if you're interested in computation. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. It's mine. So I highly recommend all the computational classes. And then, Oschlager and Kurt Anderson as professors, 2 thumbs up.
I think generations of students would confirm everything that you just said, basically, about those 2 particular faculty members. And I think we're extraordinarily lucky to have. Very nice, Sean. Very fancy. I think we're super lucky to have them here for sure. And Olschlager is my boss, so I get to hang out with him every day, and I'm extremely lucky for that, for sure. So I had a couple more questions, then I want to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. With the benefit of hindsight, if you could go back to being a first-year student or a second-year student at RPI, what would you tell your first or second-year self? That's kind of heavy, I know, but it can be something stupid. It doesn't have to be deeply profound. It seems like I'm asking for something very profound, but it could be something super practical, like eat breakfast or something. It doesn't have to be super profound. But if you could remember what it was like to be a first or second year student at RPI, if you have any advice at all, and I'll let you guys decide who goes first for whoever is ready and has something at the ready on this one.
I have 2 things, just
Ooh.
2.
Yep.
I mean, they're the most profound statements for RPI. Number 1, actually go to class. Freshman for me was not good at that. My GPA showed that. Go to class. Number 2, get a good night's sleep. that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. You're not going to finish that assignment at 2 in the morning. And even if you do, it's probably not going to be your best work. Go to bed. Like, get 8 hours, feel refreshed in the morning. Those are my only 2 pieces of advice. The rest of it you kind of figure out on your own, but I wish someone kind of shook me and was like, go to class and like actually go to sleep. Those are my 2 pieces.
Very, very solid advice there, I would say. Sean, you want to weigh in on any advice to little Sean?
Yeah,
Sean,
sure.
I knew and loved as my work study student back in freshman year.
Let's see. Recommendations. I'd say that probably one of them is that don't forget to have some fun while you're at school with a bunch of people your age that share similar interests. Yeah, you're gonna go into a workplace where people share your interests too, but people have families and things to do outside of work. Here, you just go back to your dorm or to your apartment with other people your own age. Make some time, have some fun. The friends that I made at RPI were like half my bridal party and my wedding this summer. It's the friendships you make are just as important as cliche as that sounds. It made my time at RPI wouldn't have been worth it without all the people I met.
Awesome. I think that's very, very true and quite profound, actually, Sean. And I mean, when you're a first year student in the weeds of IEA and CAD, and you know what I mean, sometimes you forget that. I've been meeting with stressed out students this week. The drop deadline wasn't that long ago, and we're coming up on the pass no credit deadline. And, how do I salvage my semester? And, at the end of the day, there's other things too, so I think that's good advice for, every stage of life, I would argue, right? We can always get wrapped up in what we do and think it's the most important thing at the time. So Alex, anything you have to add to little Alex?
I guess I'll just kind of combine Tara and Sean's. It's like, so like everything they said was so perfect. Go to class, but so first semester freshman year, I went to class too much, like I didn't get out enough. Second semester of freshman year, I got out too much. And I paid for it with my grades and ended up retaking most of those classes. But hey, it all worked out in the end. So yeah, like concentrate on your studies, get a good night's sleep. It's all really important. But also like take the opportunity to have fun and meet people. Like I met my girlfriend at RPI. I have this awesome friends group that unfortunately we all like live all over the country now, but like just a couple months ago, they all came out to LA and we got an Airbnb and hung out for a week. And it's just like I loved a lot of my classes, and RPI set me up for like the technical job that I have now. But in the end, like the most important thing for me was all those people that I met. So just like don't forget about that and get out and hang out with people, whatever it is, and try to have fun.
I think that's all super important, and I thank you all for being honest about that. I think sometimes RPI can be overwhelming. I feel like I'm meeting with a lot of overwhelmed students this semester, and a sense of perspective is good sometimes, and that number on the page, whatever that uncurved IEA grade is not who you are. It's not who you are as a person, and it's not who you are as a student, as a human being, or as an engineer. It can be tough at the time when that's all you're thinking about, right? I've always been wickedly successful in high school, and these grades in IEA are not showing that this first semester. And it's this too shall pass, and you'll get better at navigating and doing RPI as time goes on. I think you certainly get better over time, right? And figuring these things out. There is value to going to class. There's value to getting enough sleep. There's value to doing extracurriculars and not staying up all night doing that one, piece of homework that would be crappy because I can't even think at this point of the night, right? So you get better, and things do get better, and and there's some really cool things at the end of your journey at RPI. There's a lot of fun stuff in life to look forward to. So, so with that, I just want to say thank you so much for all your honest answers and your great input. And I want to throw it open to students. Anybody who's on here, you can turn on your camera or not turn on your camera, but just unmute yourself and you can ask any questions of any of these former students who have been in your spot. You can ask about how you should get internships and how do you connect with these companies, and did you use the Career Center, and anything that you want to ask. I'm going to throw it open, and I'll just shut up for a few minutes and give you guys a chance to ask some questions. And if there's not, I might ask some questions if you don't come up with some. So have at it. I know a lot of you on this. Don't forget, I know a lot of you and where you are. So, oh my God.
I have a question real quick.
Daniel, thank you. Thank
Hi.
you for jumping on and putting on your camera, honey. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So, because of I just haven't really been close to any professors or anything, and I just recently started going to office hours for one of my classes, but I don't have a connection with any of them. How do you guys suggest with getting into research and all of that? Because I might have missed it because I was 15 minutes late, but I know
We
that
did
for
not talk about
internships and
that.
that stuff,
We did not talk
having
about that. So
research
you're
helps.
perfect. Sean, you want to talk about how you got research, and then we'll talk to the other guys too.
Also, my room's a mess, but that's my roommate's fault. That's his side. So.
We were
Hi,
totally
Daniel.
silently judging you. We were totally silently judging you, Daniel.
Daniel, there's a reason my computer's turned towards this wall, and it's because the rest
Yeah.
of my room is a mess.
That's one of the disadvantages I have here.
So getting into research, I got into research. I was lucky. I did have a connection with a PhD student, and they said they had some openings and and they needed some help. So I came to a introduction session with two other people who had been looking for research and asked, and I decided to stay and take the role. However, what I did learn by talking to other people and this PhD student and my professor is that practical experience is really useful to a professor. Being able to go and find things on campus, or being able to go to the machine shop and machine something, or even just knowing that you can twist a wrench and set up lab equipment is really important. Having profound ideas about how the next CFD, great CFD solver should work is probably not as critical as a first or second year student. Prove that you can, start and finish a project on your own, and that you can, that you're willing to be useful and be helpful. That's my advice anyway.
All right. Thank you.
And anything to add to that, Alex, about how you find a research project with a faculty at RPI?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just kind of back up what was already said, and it's show that you can be useful, but also show that you have a lot of interest. I mean, I've learned that people love to talk about their work, so go in and just ask questions about it, and kind of learn about the work and show that you're interested. One other thing, you can try to connect with master's or PhD students. So one that kind of helped me. There was a PhD student that was happy to take someone on to run CFD and help him out with his work. So it's that was kind of a good way in. So yeah, I mean, I guess just make sure that you're showing interest, and that you're showing how you can be helpful, but that you're also willing to learn. And if you can connect with a student, then that might be even better. But I always found that most professors were really happy to meet and talk. So don't be afraid to reach out to them, I guess.
And Daniel, in terms of you can certainly always make appointments with faculty to talk to them or go by during office hours, right? And just to show you how you could meet grad students. It could be somebody who's a TA in one of your classes, if you know that they're in your department. Or in the case of Sean, I mean, he did work study student in our office. He was a work study student in my office. And this particular grad student would just come in and hang out and eat candy and chat. And, you know, like you can meet people in a very simple way like that. You know, I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, super calculated. You just start talking to people. You walk by somebody's lab, you see a grad student walk out, you just talk to them, you know. So, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, some serious effort on your part. It could just be almost chance sometimes, you know. If you're in a class with a faculty member who's talking about cool research, you could walk with them after class and say, can I walk, are you going back to your office? Can I walk back to your office with you, you know? And you know, I looked at your research online and I think this is really kind of interesting. You know, what are you doing in your lab these days? You know, to Alex's point, professors love to talk about their research, you know, not as many students ask them about it as you would think, you know, and it's something that, you know, they're really excited about doing. So, you know, you can feel free to start those conversations. They love that stuff, you know, and they admire a student who's just going to come into an office hours and start asking them about stuff, you know, because you seem interested. You know, you'd be surprised how few students go out of their way to do that. You know, you actually would be surprised, I think, you know. Does that answer? Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to jump in for a second. The way that I actually got, like, became, I guess, closer with my professors, I was just wearing a shirt. I walked into class one day wearing a SpaceX shirt into Kurt Anderson's class, and he picked on me during class and then came like after. I was like, I'm sorry to make fun of you, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, sometimes like that's happened to me multiple times. Like I've worn Tesla or SpaceX stuff and then a professor starts talking because they're interested or, you know, stock investor, whatever. But sometimes you also have to be a little proactive. Like I really encourage you to continue going to office hours. That's actually how I've made connect. Haven't personally done research. Again, I'm more of a COVID situation where undergraduate research really wasn't going on when I was coming back and wanted to do it. So I didn't have the opportunity, but knowing that there were professors I had just simply because I went to office hours showed interest in the class that I was in, but then also kind of expanded the conversation maybe to their research or to some other, you know, topics in aerospace that we had mutual interest in. I think really helps build those relationships with those professors, and will help you like be able to kind of ask the question like, hey, do you have a spot on your research team? Although I do know people who have just cold emailed professors and have gotten research that way too. So there's really a large number of ways you can kind of worm your way into a research group or to have a good relationship with a professor to ask them for like a recommendation letter for grad school or something. So sometimes you just have to be a little proactive, but sometimes like there are situations where you can kind of fall into it too.
And I think we're lucky in the Aero program that, you know, like we have some great faculty members who are also just really nice human beings and not, you know, not really very intimidating to talk to. And they really enjoy talking to students. I mean, I can't say that for every single program and every single faculty member, but I think we're pretty darn lucky in Aero. Don't you think, you guys? I mean, like, dang, we got some really good human beings in that group of people, you know? So I would not feel intimidated by any of them, honestly, Daniel, you know?
Okay, and then if no one has any questions, and I kind of have like a mini follow-up question.
Go for it.
So is like every professor involved with some type of research, or do I have to like find out on my own, like ask them like if they're involved with something?
So there are some faculty members who are just kind of, you know, like lecturers, and they don't necessarily have research programs. But the vast majority of our faculty are definitely involved in research of some type. I'm trying to think if there's any Aero faculty that are not, to be honest with you, and I cannot
I
think
don't
of
think
any.
Leong is.
He's gone.
He left.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really sad. I didn't
I
know.
know.
All right,
Yeah, I
never
know.
mind. Take it back.
Yeah,
What about Jim
he was the
Young?
only one. He's
Jim
gone
Young's
as
also
well.
gone.
Yeah, yeah. Jim went into industry, I know, and he was such an awesome teacher. I was really, really sad. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that was a big
know.
loss.
I know. So Daniel, we had a couple of faculty who taught Aero classes who were lecturers who didn't have research programs, but everybody who's left is research faculty. So you kind of can't go wrong there. No homework needed, you know, to find out if they have research. And, you know, if there's any particular, you know, things you're interested in, you can always swing by and you and I can have a conversation and I can give you a list of who does what, you know, I'm happy to do that for you.
I
Okay.
do know that Fotis typically takes on a lot of undergraduate. He's the aerostructures professor. Also highly recommend him. He's really, really nice, fantastic professor. But I do know a large number of undergraduate students in a variety of different fields who have been taken under him for his research and actually got published like as sophomores and juniors. So his research group would actually be a really good one to look into.
And he's a nice dude too. His last name is Kafsaftopoulos. Everyone just calls him by his first name, Frodis, because no one can spell his last name, including me. I have to look it up every single time, for sure. Olschlager took me a little while too, but I can do that in my sleep now, for sure. But Kafsaftopoulos that one's my current difficult one. Daniel, any other questions, honey? And I really appreciate your asking them.
Not really anything
Awesome.
else, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, you know, I have the contact info for these lovely people, and if you have specific questions for them, just let me know, and I'll be happy to get them answered for you. So if you think of something after we're done here, no worries. Just let me know. Okay, I'm happy to
All right.
you know, connect you with these guys. Any other questions from any of the students on here right now? Thanks again, there, Daniel. Well, I want to
Hi.
be.
Hey,
Oh,
Marie.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Hi.
No.
Hey, Marie.
Hi, you
Sorry.
can call me.
Before we ask
Yes.
this question, sorry, I gotta. I'm sorry. I have to
Alex,
hop off. It's actually
You're in the
pretty
middle of
early.
your
It's pretty
workday.
early here on the West Coast.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Please
I'm
go.
sorry I have to leave because I want to continue. But thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to chat with all these students. And yeah, feel free to. I mean, if you have my contact info, Marie, feel free to reach out if anyone thinks
Awesome.
that I can help you with anything.
Awesome.
So
Alex,
best of
thank you
luck.
so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. So best of luck to all the students. It's nice to do this and remember my time at RPI. So have fun.
That's very kind.
All right,
And
thanks.
thank you for taking time out of your workday. Thank you, honey. So Kim
Of course,
Dong,
thank you.
sorry to interrupt, honey. What was your question?
You can call me by Steven, and
Steven.
my question is for researching for intern kind of stuff, or probably applying for intern, do you actually use other platforms such as LinkedIn or something like that? Because I heard from some of my friends that it is easier to talk with the the company people through LinkedIn or something.
Okay, Tara, you wanna take that one to start?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to kind of apply for internships. I've all my internships have been kind of different. I got my first co-op referral from the CCPD actually. So, they're a really good resource. I also got my internship from being on Motorsport. A lot of the technical clubs have resume books where recruiters will specifically seek out certain clubs on campus and their resume book. And Motorsport was one of them. For Tesla, that's how I got my Tesla. I didn't even apply. SpaceX, I applied directly on their website. Highly recommend LinkedIn though. A lot of my job search right now for full-time has been going through LinkedIn. There's the LinkedIn jobs page is really good. You can put all your filters on there. You can reach out to recruiters as well. I do know quite a few people who have called recruiters and gotten interviews from that. So I would just recommend using all the resources you can find. And my number one recommendation is apply as early as possible and to as many positions as possible that sound interesting to you. Some companies have, philosophies against maybe don't apply for 30 different positions and all different types of engineering. But, if you see a job that you're interested in, even if you don't think you're qualified, apply to it, because you never know if you're going to get it. That's like the number one thing that I have learned, and I see a lot of my friends and peers struggle with, is like, they're like, I'm not going to get this job, so I'm not even going to apply to it. Let the recruiter decide that. Give yourself a chance, because you never know. I would have never applied to Tesla. I was lucky that a recruiter was like, her resume looks decent, let's get her in for an interview. So definitely just trying to take those opportunities, and make sure that you're always applying early, and always just apply to things that you're interested, even if it's like you may not have all the qualifications. They might see something on your resume that really sticks out to them. So, but LinkedIn has definitely been a really good resource for me, like through my full-time job search.
Sean, anything to add to that from your experience, honey?
I have to just default to Tara on this one. I got my first real engineering internship through the career fair, and then I worked my way. It was at Pratt, and I worked my way into the role that I wanted over the course of multiple summers, and then into a full-time offer. So I would agree. Use all the resources that you can. You don't know where it's going to come from, and apply to things even if you don't know that you're qualified for it. That seems like very solid advice to me.
Because Stephen, if everyone thinks they're not going to qualify, and they can end up with not enough applicants for the job, and you might be the guy that picks it up, So I think that's really good advice, and it's counterintuitive to what I think the way a lot of students think. They feel like they have to tick every box before they can apply, right? And you were going to say something else, Tara. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to also add, actually used Handshake also as a resource. I got an interview and a full-time offer for a position I'm pretty sure I'm taking from not the career fair, but the industry workshop thing that they did recently. Yeah, and I ended up getting hooked up with a manager that I wanted to do exactly what his group was doing, and he was looking for an engineer who had my skill set, and without that connection, I would not have gotten this offer with this team. So definitely attend those career events as well. I know that they kind of get underutilized with some of the students, and I know the CCPD has been trying to get out more of the programming, but definitely check that events page. There's really good tech talks and info sessions on for companies too. So I definitely recommend using that resource as well. I don't think enough students use that towards their advantage, because that's a really good way to get direct contact with hiring managers.
Agree. I think sometimes students just say oh, nothing ever comes in the career or in the career center, and career fair is a waste of time, and our career center stinks, and I have not seen that over the years. You know what I mean? I've seen students get internships and co-ops and jobs directly from those contacts. And that's part of why you're paying this crazy amount of tuition to RPI is, for those connections and those companies that come year after year after year because they want our students, and they make those connections through the Career Center, So, and it's great to know that specific event, kind of resulted in that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it can definitely be frustrating. I hear and empathize with students who get frustrated with sometimes the career fair, in terms of you do have a lot of sessions that are just 10 minutes of maybe an info session, and they're like, apply online, and you're like, what was the point? But sometimes you do get those moments where it's like, okay, I have an interview, and maybe I'll get an offer from this. So always take those opportunities, because you never know what will end up happening to you. I was not going into that night expecting to get an offer from and that was the company that I really wanted to work for, and I really, really got lucky, and was really fortunate to the manager that I spoke to, but I would have never had that if I didn't choose to attend.
That's awesome. That's great. Does that answer your question, Stephen?
Yes, it definitely does. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, no. Thank you for asking the question. I appreciate your doing that. Anyone else have any other questions this evening? I want to be respectful of our alums' time, just because I know they've got many other things to do, and Tara's probably got schoolwork to do, I'm guessing, at some point tonight.
I have a project due tomorrow, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. For what class?
It's okay. For CFD, it's my midterm. It's like 50% of my grade.
Oh, is that all? Oh, geez.
Yeah,
Is that
just
all?
a little bit. Just a little bit.
Any other questions from any other students? If not, I will thank the students for being here tonight. And if any of your friends couldn't make it, we'll throw this recording up on our YouTube channel within a couple of days, and I'll send out that link. So if you want to share that with anybody, I think we always have great information from our alums who are gracious enough to take time out. So thank you for the students for attending, and Sean and I and Tara will hang out for a couple of minutes here, and if there's nothing else, I wish all the students on here a good night, and hope you're all set for registration, which opens next week.